everyone. My guest today is Ryan Hanley, a serial entrepreneur in the insurance and SaaS space. He built Progress, led growth at Linqura, gave a TED talk with 500,000 plus views, and hosts one of the top 150 podcasts on Apple. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Oh, it's so good to be here. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Great. So let me just hit you with the first question. Let's start with revenue. How long did it take to hit your first 1 million, and was it through Progress or Linqura?
So it was through the company that I founded in 2020, Rogue Risk. That company was a commercial insurance agency in just in the United States. We wrote business in 43 different states, and we bootstrapped it to start. I raised about 150,000 from angels, and we were able to grow that company to the point where we sold in 2022. And I actually exited when I hit that revenue mark. That $1 million revenue mark in November of 2023. So that was the first trigger for exit for me. And for that situation, and every company is different when a founder chooses to leave. But for that company and the direction that the company I sold it to was taking, once I hit that first exit trigger, I decided it was a good time to go and move on to my next project.
Okay, that's brilliant. So what was your business model? It was flat fee, commission, or retainers? The first one.
Yeah, so everything in the property casualty insurance space is done off commission for the most part. There are a few fees that you can charge, but for the most part, you get paid a commission by the insurance carrier that you place the business with. So where we decided to focus was in the small commercial market. So think Main Street businesses, consultants. We weren't working with large multi-state or national or international companies for the most part. So what we had to do was develop a process that allowed us to streamline the sales, kind of speed to bind, because, binding is what they call closing in insurance. And because you don't really have any control over pricing, right? Insurance agents and brokers for the most part are middle people. So you're you don't have the ability to play with any of the pricing levers that a lot of founders get to play with. And you are kind of beholden to the products that they're able to sell, willing to sell, and how they deliver them, which, limits the places that you can add systematic either value or efficiencies into the process. So I developed a sales process that, a proprietary sales process that we called the one called close system, which allowed us to increase our reps close ratio to over 80% of qualified leads, which dwarfs the marketplace. The market usually closes somewhere between 35 to 40% in property casualty, and we were closing north of 80. And that sales process, backed by some relatively simple technology, allowed us to grow at scale.
That's amazing. So when we talk about sales, what was your, what kind of marketing did you rely on? Did you rely on inbound or outbound cold calls or referrals, whatever that worked for you?
Yeah. So I knew with small commercial, you don't make a lot of money. So the average, when you think, one thing just for the audience, and this is contextual, and because I work in the insurance industry, I feel obligated to say this, insurance agents and brokers don't get paid a lot of money for each policy they sell, right? Mm-hmm. There's this general narrative, I think, that people have that if they pay $10,000 for insurance, that agent is making $10,000. They are not. In many cases, they make about 10% of that. So in order to actually put real revenue on the books, you got to sell a lot of policies. And I knew that if we were doing outbound for the small commercial space where the revenue per account was relatively small, I needed to do scale. So we went inbound, and that took a couple different forms. Our number one lead source was actually YouTube. I saw there was a gap in the market. Most insurance organizations as a whole are really terrible marketers. And because of that, there was some blue ocean left in the insurance industry that maybe wasn't necessarily the case in other spaces like real estate or travel or et cetera. So we ran like a fairly straightforward hub and spoke content strategy on YouTube, and we're able to generate between 25 to 30 inbound leads a day, with about 85% of those being qualified just from YouTube alone. Then the two other major sources of inbound traffic that we got were referral partners. So we found organizations that worked with small businesses and partner with them on a referral basis to drive leads in. And then actually our third largest lead source was agencies that only wrote personal lines. So only wrote like home and auto. And because there's a fairly significant nuanced difference between personal lines, so your homeowner's insurance, your auto insurance, and your business insurance, a lot of agencies will only write personal, but they get commercial lines accounts into their agencies. So we came up with a standardized contract that allowed us to create a referral agreement with those agencies as well. And I think at our height, we had like 35 or 40 personal lines insurance agencies around the country that were just sending us leads all day as well. So those were our three primary methods and how we ultimately scaled the business.
So how many contracts did it take for you to take your, make your first million?
We had, so we were, in all fairness, I think we're at like 987,000 in ARR when I left. So we weren't exactly at $1 million. Like I said, I wasn't a big fan of the direction the company that bought us took us. So as soon as I hit that first exit trigger, I was like, I'm good. But that being said, when I think to get there, we were at just under 1,300 accounts. Think maybe 2.7 policies per account. So just to give you an idea of what that looked like.
And the duration was like how many months?
Just under 4 years. We were at so that would be 48, so maybe 42 months probably. And now one thing to remember, the first 5 months we didn't write a single policy because I launched Rogue Risk 7 days before COVID hit. So I launched Rogue Risk, 7 days later COVID hits, the entire world is shut down. No one is thinking about their commercial insurance. So for the first 5 months, we literally didn't sell a policy. So in that 40 months, you have to carve out the first 5 months where literally no one was buying insurance, right? It took 3 months just for people to come back and actually open up their businesses. And then after that, for the first 2 months, no one was interested in talking about commercial insurance. I mean, it was just no. It wasn't until like late July, August that, we really started to get some traction coming back. And then we really kind of hit the gas pedal from there. Because during that time, I knew the market was going to snap back, right? Like I had to believe that the world just wasn't ending because of COVID. So I was creating a massive amount of content on YouTube, on different platforms. So I was doing a lot of that like content SEO work that I knew would pay dividends down the line during this period that we weren't able to write any business. So it wasn't like we were sitting on our hands. I was working on referral partners, setting up some of those agreements and laying the groundwork during that time period, which probably ended up being a blessing because if we were also trying to write policies during that time, it may have slowed our ultimate growth. But if you can take a bright spot out of that time period, at least for our particular business, it was that we got to do so much focus on demand generation during that time.
I think the medium part would be YouTube for you to generate all your sales, even in COVID.
It was by far the largest and most consistent source of qualified leads. Not even close.
And would you still feel the same way?
Yeah. I mean, I actually think, and I have a newsletter where I write about this stuff. And I just published an article this week around the concept of speed to trust. So I believe that in the age of AI, where 5 years ago, we're still kind of in the digital age, speed to bind or speed to close, right? That's always been the clear kind of solve, right? Where do we find inefficiencies in our process, in our talk track, in our lead gen, right? We're always playing with these levers to how quickly can I take someone from they're interested in our product, service / business to they're now a paying customer. I think every founder, CEO should be focused on that process and spending time there, particularly if you have a sales orientation like I do. However, what I see coming, and we're not all the way there today, now I'm the CEO of an AI company that serves the commercial insurance space. So I've kind of flipped from agency side to tech side, and I'm now selling into the agencies that were my peers and competitors. I think in today's age, there's a different metric that we have to work. We still want to think about speed to bind, right? Speed to close. We still want to think about that metric for sure. Absolutely. But with AI and with technology, it's going to take less effort to maximize and optimize that process. So what should we be focusing on if everybody is able to be efficient and effective through their sales process? What is the differentiator in that world? And to me, it's speed to trust. So what that means is more than ever before, your brand, your connection to your prospects, customers, market, community, how you talk about your product, personalizing your marketing, humanizing your marketing. You have that process becomes even more important. Now, it's always been important, but I think certain businesses with certain products, right? There's that whole like Silicon Valley mentality of, if you have a great product, you don't need good marketing. That to me is survivor bias bullshit. Like that to me is, okay, you look at certain companies who made it and you go, oh, they didn't do any marketing. They just had an amazing product. So that must be what you do. And to me, I think that's bad advice for founders. If you're not marketing your product, you are toast. Like 99.999% of the time, you are toast. So, but I do think with a good product and maybe some good relationships, you could get by without great marketing or without a great branding. You could build that secondary, right? You could build that great brand down the road. I don't know that that's the case anymore. I think right from the rip, founders especially have to be thinking right along with the product that they're building or the service that they're providing. They need to be thinking about, how do we talk about this? What is our brand? Who's our market? How do we connect with them? How do we build a group of individuals who use our product that not just would be willing, but want to tattoo our logo on their body because they believe in what we're doing and the value we provide so much. And I know that sounds ethereal and fluffy, but and that's nothing new. Like, I'm not saying anything that's revolutionary. My thought that I think is different about this time is that you can't do those things asynchronously anymore. You should be synchronously building your product along with your brand at the exact same time. And that's when I talk about this concept of speed to trust. That's how you do that, right? Whoever can capture trust first wins the deal today, because I think more and more what we actually do and the product we provide will become more commoditized. So I want to do business with brands who believe what I believe, not because their product is better, but because that's who I want to do business with, because the quality of the product and the consistency of the product is getting commoditized regardless of what space you're in.
And I think when you're giving value through your content, the trust automatically builds up. You don't need a big brand if you're just starting out new. You just, need to throw in the value, and I think you can get the trust. So, what was your, did you raise capital or bootstrap that entire journey when you were, building up?
Yeah, so Rogue Risk, we only did an angel round. We raised 150 from angels. Most of that was to get us through COVID. Basically, like, I kind of put my life savings into starting the business, and then, hadn't expected to have my first 5 months be zero revenue. So I did an angel round mostly to bridge that, which is all I needed. Once we hit the ground running, we were able to grow fast enough. And then actually a company kind of came out of left field, saw what we were doing, scooped us up, and kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I wasn't necessarily looking to sell inside of 2 years, but I think, we all have to, again, I don't try to live by these like draconian, Silicon Valley heuristics around, if you had a product, I had people say to me, well, if you believed in what you were doing, you wouldn't have sold. And it's like, yeah, except you didn't see what they offered me for the amount of time I had put into it, and knowing what the pain that was coming down the road, because I knew what we had to do to kind of get past different chasms in our growth. If you've ever read, it's right over here, Crossing the Chasm. Like, I knew that our early success was in people who are more innovator, early adopter, and that at some point I was going to have to cross this hurdle, this chasm, to get to the early majority of kind of digital insurance buyers. And I knew that was going to take a ton of money, and it was going to take a ton of time and ton of pain. And I saw an ability to jump that with a partner and take some capital off the table and take some risk off the table. And that was the value calculation that I made at that time. So sold, all good, exited, felt great. With Linqura, we've already raised an angel round at 500K. We've done $1 million in a pre-seed, and we're currently in a $3 million seed round. We have a lead investor. We're doing some strategics now and have a couple follow-ons. So that round should be wrapped up hopefully by the end of the summer. And I'm hoping, again, tumblers have to fall in place here. I'm hoping to not have to do a Series A. With our growth trajectory, it looks like we can reach escape velocity without having to do a Series A, which would be tremendous. Just maxes out the value for both internal stakeholders as well as our investors. But if we have to, we'll probably look midsummer of 2026 to do a Series A. I mean, I don't think there's a specific number because, again, every business is different, and these are and I don't mean to be wishy-washy in my answer, right? So I think, again, there's a filtering system. So the way my brain works, I try to craft things as filters, right? So nothing is so completely diffuse that everything gets through it, nor does it block every idea, right? We want to pass these ideas through a set of filters that helps us get to an answer. So our burn rate technically right now is actually very high. Now the reason for that is the product that we're building and the way that we were approaching it, we had to bake in a year of zero rev development in order to build the base of the platform to now get to the point where we are today, where we're in market and we're just rapidly deploying functionality every single month. And it's phenomenal. And people are like, how are you, putting this out? Well, we're able to put the functionality out today because we did the very painful work of an entire year of burning money to build the platform. It's paying fruit today. So the gamble was worth it. I think a lot of startup advisors would look at the decisions we made and they'd be like, oh, you shouldn't spend that much, grow slower, etc. But look, like if you're going to play this game, you are essentially buying a lottery ticket. Every startup is a lottery ticket, and like if you're going to play this game, you can't limp into it. And if you're going to follow some standardized form, some standardized process that every other business is following, understand you are every other business. So I tend to I like understanding what maybe best practices are, and your burn rate should be X percentage of projected revenue and blah, blah. And I get all that. And those are good numbers to know. But for us, we decided to say look, if this thing's going to be, if we're going to be $1 billion valued company someday, does it make sense to limp into this and take 3 years to get the platform done? Or do we just bite the bullet, go all in, get the platform built, and trust and believe in ourselves on the back end that we can market and build the relationships necessary to drive the revenue to catch up to that burn rate once we're there? And that's the point that we're in now. Now, I firmly believe that, I can market and create demand as well as anyone inside the insurance space. So I bet on myself, I bet on my team, and it was like, let's go do this. So our burn rate is fairly high for where we should be. And but the good news is we don't need to add burn now, right? Now the revenue that we get, that we bring in every month, that's just eating into the burn. So, there's ways of looking at this. And I think as long as a founder, if you can justify both in the math and in the philosophy why you are choosing to either maybe bootstrap and go, use off the rack products to start and, build brand first and, or, hey, I'm going to go get 5 customers and then build, that's a whole strategy. That's great. There's no, and that tends to keep your burn lower because you have revenue in door already and all that kind of stuff. I think there's a whole nother version of founder that needs to, hey, we got to build some stuff and we got to kind of eat it for a while until we get our tool to the term it's ready to go. And I think as long as you're doing it intentionally and you have strategy, philosophy, and math behind you, I think, there's not really a right or wrong answer. I think where people get themselves in trouble is when they go in with no strategy, no philosophy, and no math, and they're just like, we'll figure it out as we go. And that is just, that's the path to death, in my opinion. Yeah, I think you want to keep your team as small as you possibly can until you hit that first million. Um, you really don't want to go much beyond 12, 13 people to get to a million. I know. And if you can keep it low, or keep it as low as you can, right? And actually I was listening to Daniel Priestley. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's out of the UK, talks a lot about entrepreneurship. He made a really good point the other day on a podcast I was listening to, where he was talking about how at from 12 to 13 employees, you go from one team to multiple teams. So there's something about 12 employees where up to 12, you can basically all work as one unit, right? Everyone has their roles and you can communicate well and things don't get lost and you can move pretty fast up to 12. And that when you go from 12 to 13, there's something about that number of employees that now you start to break in. Now you have a sales team. Now you have a development team. And his point was that by adding too much staff too quickly, there's a genius in the early days and everyone bouncing off of each other. In the engineers being on the same call as the salespeople, as the same call as your marketing people, as the same call as your product people, etc. And I do truly believe that. I truly believe that the longer you can keep different, what would normally be departments in a larger organization, the longer you can keep them together as you grow, the better. So it is imperative that you keep your teams as small as you can. And I've seen million revenue businesses with one person, right? And I've seen million revenue businesses with 20 people, and the smaller the better. The smaller the better. It's going to, and also here's the other point that I think is really important that a lot of founders miss. Early on, if they're not a founding team member, don't hire rock stars. Like known commodity rock stars. Let me put it that way, right? Like that expensive, enterprise level salesman that's going to cost you a ton of money. Most likely that guy or gal is, one, not built for a startup, and two, that salary is going to crush you. So you have to be, and again, not that founders need another hat, but you kind of have to be a ninja in finding people like undiscovered talent. And you may have to rip through some people, right? And this is something a lot of founders don't like. They bring someone in, they're nice, but they're not really getting by, but it's early and it's a family. We're a family. I don't really love that. I don't really love that idea. We're a family. I think that's something to avoid. I think it feels good, but I think we should try to avoid that as much as we can. So, but you have to be kind of draconian in firing people early on. It's find somebody, so a place that I found a lot of early traction with some really good people was with single moms and moms with young kids. So in the insurance industry, it's a 9 to 5 kind of job. Like they want you to punch in at 9 and punch out at 5. They want you in the office. And for moms with young kids and single moms, like the kid barfs at school at 11 a.m., you got to go get your freaking kid, right? And like, I'm not saying dads can't be part of it too, but moms tend to bear the brunt of this. And there was all these incredibly talented women in the marketplace who just didn't fit into this traditional structure. And so I was able to bring these women in, train them up, and they just became absolute killers because, maybe, yeah, they got to take an hour in the middle of the day, or they can't log in till 10 a.m. because they got to get their kid on the bus or whatever other stuff they have going on in their life. I was okay with that, right? I had a flexible schedule environment, but we went off results. So by giving them results and flexibility, so they knew exactly what target they had to hit, but they had the flexibility to get it done and this is one of the things, like for founders, remember, like you're a founder. You have the contract you signed was stress, anxiety, time, your time is gone. Your brain cycles are going to be spent 90 to 100% on your work, right? I don't care who the team member is. They have a life. They're going to have outside stresses. And if you can find, now Google kind of, I think, corrupted this idea a little too much with like the pool tables and the slides, but like as much as you can find ways to say, hey, so the value proposition to the women on my team was, I'm going to remove the stress that you're going to get yelled at or chastised or put on a PIP because you need flexibility in your schedule. I'm going to take that stress away. And the only thing I ask in return is you hit these numbers. As long as you agree to them. If you agree to these numbers, I just need you to hit them, right? You want to log back in at 8 p.m.? Great. I don't care, right? Because you had to take your kid, had a half day and, whatever. So you needed that time. I'm fine with that. You hit your numbers, we're good. And that simple value proposition, created an environment where people knew exactly what was expected of them and they got after it. Now, here's the hard part. We had to be very strict on hitting your results. So if you missed your numbers 1 month, you went on a PIP, right? Performance improvement plan. If you missed your numbers the second month, you were on probation. And if you missed your numbers the third month, I had to let you go. So you basically had 90 days to get your numbers going. And that was part of the hiring process, was explaining that to them. Yes. Yeah, I mean, look, we would have conversations at each step of the process. If there were extenuating circumstances, if something was going on, obviously we're not, this isn't like, we're not being silly. I don't want to lose a good person because there's an extenuating circumstance. But like, if they're just not making the calls, if they just seemingly can't handle the flexible environment, some people think they want a flexible environment, and then when they get in it, it doesn't necessarily work for them. So if it just wasn't working, I built that mechanism in up front because I hate firing people. Like, I find the good in everybody. So I had to have a system to say, this company needs to grow. We have a process in place. We have training in place. We have tools in place. So if you work this system, you should be able to hit these numbers fairly easily. And if you don't, here's what happens. And that gave us the ability to go, warning 1, warning 2, we're sorry. We wish you nothing but the best, but this isn't a good fit. And that allowed us to get to the A players very quickly because the C players would cycle themselves out. You have to make one of two decisions. You either need to forget all of your other founder duties and become the number one salesman, or you need to get out of the way and be of service of your team. You have two options, right? So you can kind of all hands on deck to say 300,000 to $500,000. I think you can get to about there. But what happens is that all hands on deck, whoever's available mentality, that does not allow you to scale. You can't build systems around that mentality. So that philosophy. So you really have to pick one of two. A lot of advice that I see is that the founder needs to, kind of remove themselves from the business, become replaceable. I think that's a little too early for that. But you have to kind of pick one of two paths. I think there is a path that isn't talked about enough where the CEO founder becomes the outspoken brand and the biz dev monster, and you're bringing in the whales, and that's your job, and that's all you do, right? You're out there, you're on stages, you're doing podcasts, you're working with the big deals, you're bringing them in, and that's what you do. And in that case, you need to find either an amazing EA or a COO or some type of operations person who can run the business, or a president that can run the business behind you, a co-founder maybe, or you need to kind of be of service of your team, and you are not the front person. You are not the killer sales person. And, unless maybe you need to jump on 1 or 2 calls, and you just become the problem solver behind the scenes that's enabling your people to do their jobs. You cannot have one foot in each bucket. That's where I think so many founders get stuck, is they try to be the killer salesperson, brand guy or gal, and they're also behind the scenes trying to figure out technology solutions and efficiencies and build SOP. And it's like, you can't be both those things and scale your business. You have to pick a lane. I don't think either lane is wrong. I know founders often get chastised when they are still that big BD whale hunter position because, there's other things you should be doing, etc. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I mean, I think the founder has to operate as much as they possibly can in their zone of genius. And if you're a sales guy or gal and that's what you do, or you're the marketing person, you're just a killer in marketing, etc., like, double into that space and use that zone of genius and drive it forward. But you can only wear all the hats for so long. And I think some people try to wear them for too long. If a founder has gotten someone to give them money in exchange for equity, they know how to sell. I don't believe that there are too many founders that don't know how to sell. It doesn't mean their sales process may not look like everyone else's, but again, I think founders need to remove all this best practice bullshit, right? Like best practices are the median of things that companies do. It doesn't mean that that's what works for you. If you're nerdy as hell and you're not a great speaker and you're not great at eye contact, but you're brilliant, I would still buy from you. If you're freaking brilliant and your tool works, and I'm looking at this guy going, this dude's nerdy as hell, but geez, I think his product's amazing. He's obviously smart. Like, I'll buy your thing. Like, just own who you are. That's selling is just owning who you are and delivering value proposition. That's what it is. I mean, we overcomplicate this thing so much. And like, I tend to, I'm an outspoken, more kind of like loud type of person. Obviously, I'm talking, but but that doesn't mean that that's always the right way to sell, right? I also can't do the nerdy stuff, right? So like, I tend to operate more in sales. But I think for a founder who maybe isn't as comfortable in that space, like I was talking to a guy at an event the other day, and he was asking me about this. He was more the engineer founder, right? And he's like, he's kind of commiserating a little bit over he wishes he was better at sales. He kind of said a similar thing. Um, and you know, I don't mean this in a negative way, like nerdy kind of dude, you know what I mean? Like had the book back on and kind of wasn't a great haircut, but man, this dude was brilliant. I mean, just 20 minutes of conversation, he's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So then I'm asking him about his business, and he's like, "Well, we raised 5 million in our seed round," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, who raised 5 million in our seed round?" And he's like, "Well, me and my co-founder." I'm like, "So you were on every call to raise 5 million in your seed round?" And he's like, "Yes," and I'm like, "You can sell." What do you think you were doing when you were raising that money? That's exactly what you were doing. You were selling someone to hand you money in exchange for equity. So I think people put a little too much pressure on sales, and I think they don't give themselves enough credit. That being said, if you're terrible at it and it's not your zone of genius, find someone else to do it. I think it would be silly not to do that. Yeah. I think that you have to be careful not to dehumanize your content, but I think you would be absolutely insane to not leverage AI to help build your personal brand today. And I think also, and I don't know if this is where you're going, but even if you are the engineer technology side founder that doesn't love to be out front, I think that you need to start building your personal brand, because investors and larger buyers, they're they're buying the founders and the founding team as much as they're buying the product. So if there's nothing out there about you because you're a heads down, fingers on keyboards kind of guy or gal, um, that's not necessarily a good thing. You don't have to love it, right? Pay somebody to do it. I mean, for $1,000 a month, you can pay someone to take over your entire personal brand, and at least get you a solid baseline of content and thought leadership. And pick one platform, pick X or pick LinkedIn or whatever, wherever your people are. You don't have to be on every platform, right? It is perfectly fine as a founder, especially a more technology driven founder, to say, hey, I share some of my thoughts on what I build, and whether it's AI or whatever your space is, crypto, like I share them on X. And if you want to check me out, go there. And that's more than enough. But I do think, even if you're not the forward facing founder or someone who does a lot of public stuff, or you don't love it as much, I do think it's important to at least have a baseline brand that investors and large buyers can come in, connect to, understand who you are. That is only going to grease the skids for your sales process. Um, if someone handed me a dump truck of money and didn't want to take a ton of equity, yes, I would build from scratch. What I would rather do is take an existing agency, modernize it, and grow it. I think there's way more opportunity there. There's a lot of agencies that have incredible customer bases that are just not modernized, and there can be immediate EBITDA lifts just by taking and modernizing that agency. Not even taking them, just if you digitize them. I'm not even talking about bringing in AI stuff. If you just digitize a lot of agencies, you can get a massive lift and really start to scale that business. And then if you start to layer in some AI stuff on top of it, I think you could take it to the next level. And I think there's enough of those opportunities out there that starting from scratch would not be necessarily something I would want to do. But if I could find an agency with 750 to maybe $1.5 million of revenue today that was a little antiquated in their process and systems, I think I could come in and, I can turn that into a $5 million revenue agency in a matter of years. I don't know if it's unpopular, but like this this game is so much less about how good you are at something and so much more about how much grit you have to just keep going. And that's not a new idea, but I'm, oh my gosh, I'm 25 years into my business career. I'm 15 years into my entrepreneurial career. I've been a mercenary CEO. I've been a mercenary CMO. I've built multiple brands. I've grown my podcast to consistently rank in the top 50 or 150 of all of Apple podcasts. I've done 400 plus keynotes. Like, I say all that simply to say I'm not even close to the best speaker. I'm not the best podcaster. I'm not the best CEO, founder, leader, salesperson. I am not the best in any of those categories. The only kind of superpower that I was gifted from God is quite simply, I just don't quit. I just keep going. Like, you cannot beat me down. I don't care. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. You got to be. So maybe another thing is so I have this philosophy on my show. It's inappropriate, so I won't say the last word, but it's GNF, give no, and I'm sure you can pick out what the last word is. If you're going to be the founder of a company, like, and this is gender agnostic, you got to have big brass balls. You have to make calls and live with the consequences. If you're going to try to get buy-in and get everyone on the same page, that's big bureaucratic. The companies that you're trying to disrupt and take business from, that's what they do, right? They have to get buy-in. They have to get consensus. They have to get approvals, right? You, as the founder, have to make calls and live with the consequences and let the market decide. Because here's what I know for sure. I don't care. You are guessing every day. Every decision's a guess. You are building something from scratch. I don't care if other people have done it before you, right? They did it at a different time in a different market with a million other different nuanced things from your specific business. So you have to make calls and let the market show you what happens and iterate from there and make the next call and make the next call and make the next call. And if you can somehow figure out how to make enough right calls in a row, you're going to hit that million in ARR. The gates will open to more investment capital. The gates will open to, hitting escape velocity and actually turning a profit and putting that back into your business if you want to go that direction. But if you are someone who cannot make decisions or cannot handle the stress and pressure of making a decision and having it not be the right one, you will get absolutely slaughtered. You'll get slaughtered. I mean, you have to be willing to make decisions. Yes. Yeah. It's like, I mean, yeah, I'm a move fast and break things guy. And I, again, in the context of being reasonable, right? I mean, we don't want to make dumb decisions, but I firmly believe that I don't know the right next thing to do. I don't know. I have ideas. I have what I believe are really good guesses. I have a plan for sure, but I don't know. I could have in my mind this function that I think is going to generate a massive amount of new customers and lift and value, and we could put it out and it could do nothing. The market could just be like, yeah, no, we don't really love that, right? And I don't care how much you talk to your customers, et cetera. So and my point in saying that is, if you believe everything's a guess, then you're not shooting for perfection, and everything becomes a lesson, right? Wins and lessons. This is Stoic philosophy from 2000 years ago, right? Like, wins and lessons. It's you either figure out something that works or you figure out something that doesn't. And the things that don't work, you iterate. And then you just keep doing that over and over and over again. It's a massive amount. And this is, as well as I do, it is a massive amount of stress and anxiety. But that is what you signed up for when you decided to become a founder. And your job, and I know I'm meandering a little bit here, but your job is to deflect that stress and anxiety from all of your people. So you have to think of yourself like an umbrella from stress and anxiety. You have to take it all. That's why we have cold plunges and boxing routines and yoga and supplements and Adderall, right? Like, you have to take it all. That's your job. But at the same time, you have to build a canopy over your team so they don't feel that way, so they can run. And I think a lot of founders want to pass that stress and anxiety down to their team so that people know what they're dealing with. That is bullshit. that is the worst kind of founder, in my opinion. Like your fourth team member who decided to bet on you and come in and leave their corporate job, they should not have to feel the stress and anxiety that you feel as the founder. It is not their responsibility to feel that stress. It is your necessity that you deflect that from them. Because if they start questioning the fact that they left their $150,000 a year to take a $60,000 salary and some equity and come work with you, right? They don't need that. They already have pressure and anxiety in their life. They don't need the additional stuff that you get from the company. So, you know, I mean, that's a really important part. I don't talk about that part very often. But that is a really, really important part of being a founder. And I literally, like, I've done a bunch of angel investments and stuff. And like, if I get the sense that that founder is a complainer, excuse maker, passes the buck, is an oversharer, right? Like, you want to be transparent, but they don't need to know everything. Your team doesn't need to know everything, not because they aren't like capable of understanding, but because it's your job to handle that stress. If the numbers are off this month and you're feeling a little cash pinch, right? Like, you need to bear that brunt and figure out the problem. Your sales guy or gal shouldn't feel that, right? Your person who's doing dev shouldn't feel that. They need to focus on their job. And too many founders these days, I think, just culturally feel like they need to share everything and pass all this burden down. And it's like, you are destroying your company culture, destroying it. Thank you. Appreciate it.